What was the kind of language from your executive leadership that was starting to communicate to you in terms of being a field studio? What were the conversations pre-chat GPT, post-chat GPT that you should be having with your clients? Were you asked to talk more about Gen AI as such as a service and some of these things as well?
From the hardware aspect and the compute and the capacity and the infrastructures and the cloud and everything else that we have as part of that, where this is happening physically. And I would say that the journey has been evolving tremendously with the different techniques that AI as a big umbrella brings to the table, right? So if we think about AI, we can think about machine learning and computer vision and natural language processing and blah, blah, blah. At the end, they're all techniques.
Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of the AIM Media House podcast Simulated Reality. Today we have with us the Field Chief Data Officer of Dataiku, Catalina Herrera. Catalina, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good as well. Thank you so much for asking. Catalina, it's an absolute privilege to be speaking with you. You have had an extensive career in data. You held your first job in analytics in 2005, when data analytics and data science was not even that much of a buzzword as such, right? And over a period of time, you have held multiple roles. I just want to understand your journey, right? I just want to have a chat. I want to have fun. I want to really learn what it was working on data analytics in 2005, and what it is being a field chief data officer, talking with so many clients of Dataiku and working with them very closely.
Yeah.
Let's start with your first role, right? Let's start with, I think you were, if I'm not wrong, you were in Alternative Energy Institute and you were doing alternative energy data analysis at that time. Just walk us through what was your journey like, what was your work, etc.
Yeah. Happy to. Well, that sounds like a forever ago, right? It's like, oh my gosh, almost 20 years. But if you think about it, we have been digitalizing everything that we do around. We have been collecting data from all over the sources, structures, and structures. 20 years ago, I started my journey at West Texas A&M University. And they had this Alternative Energy Institute that collected all the data coming from the wind turbines. So when you are in the field and you see these big wind farms where you have all the turbines going around, well, there is a lot that goes beyond that. And I was part of the team that was studying the wind direction to be able to characterize the correlations with seasonality and direction, altitude, pressure, everything to optimize the developer of a wind farm. So the role, it was very, step by step, you need to collect the data somewhere. So the data was actually in these kind of SIM cards that you put inside the wind turbine, and you actually have to go at the different places physically and collect the card out of it, and then collect all the cards from all the locations in Texas, and then consolidate that data. So that was the first time that I faced big data, because we are talking about a lot of data coming from all over the place. And I had to be, very aware of what is it that I was looking at. Where is this coming from? So I can have a little bit of geoanalytics involved. And then you have the different seasonalities that you start seeing as part of that research. Actually, I published a book at that time that was co-hosted with one of the main characters in the wind industry in Texas, Dr. Buck Nelson. And he actually was my thesis director. So I had the opportunity to learn a lot about not only the wind and the theory beyond it and how to really maximize what you can get out of these turbines, but at the same time, the process of the data itself. I think it was the first time that I was facing the fact that it's hard to consolidate this information coming from multiple sources and then trying to have a one holistic view as what is going on here and how I can make use of it. And to translate that information to somebody that perhaps is thinking about the developer aspect of it, like where are we going to put these things and how we're going to ensure that we maximize what we are producing based on all the information and insights that we are generating. And that was the first time that I understood the power of data. Like that was the first time that I had like an aha moment in terms of painting the picture holistically. Is it what is that we are doing here? Because, you know, sometimes we just focus on the little piece, and the little piece is very isolated. You need to think bigger. So the more holistic the perspective, the better the insights, the better the decision that you can make. Was a phenomenal experience, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the first things as well, when I started my career as a data scientist, right, when you start looking at pictures and suddenly observe patterns. Now, whether the usability of it is there for the decision maker is not, but you start observing some patterns is something really cool and fun. And what I am hearing from you is that you did IoT before, not just data analysis, but even IoT before IoT was a big thing, right? You collected.
Exactly, like physically.
Yeah,
physically. Yeah.
So what were some of the insights that they were looking at that time, right? Like what was the problem statement? Because they always mention that you shouldn't do data analysis, data science, or AI for the sake of it. It should solve a problem, and data science data is just a means. What were some of the problem statements at that time that, you know, you felt that data analysis is right here, and what did you solve then?
Yeah, well, the problem was very simple. Where are we going to put these things? And how are we going to maximize what we are producing? And really, so first of all, it's an alternative energy source, which is huge for our planet and for everything that we are thinking about in consumption, and the balance between the equilibrium, right? You need to be green and ecological. We wanted to ensure that the turbines were in a place where the balance was as best as possible in terms of the birds and the species that were flying there, and the location from the altitude perspective to maximize the production, but at the same time understand directionality and how that is going to correlate with the actual seasonality of the weather, and understand that it was a multivariable problem. So the problem we were trying to solve was simple. We needed alternative energy. We needed to support these developers, as in where are we going to put physically these turbines, and at the same time, how are we going to maintain that ecosystem in equilibrium. So we needed to study all the insights that we could possibly have. And that's also when I discovered the importance of, as you say, the patterns, but also like the different colors that the different layers of the information bring to the table, right? It was not only the physical capability of the engine, of the turbine, oh yeah, this is going to be able to generate X watts or whatever, right? But it was also, oh, we have to really consider the altitude, or we have to really consider where is this facing and which time of the year, because it actually correlates with the seasons and everything else that you have as part of that characterization. So it's like, okay, we need to think about this as a multivariable problem. Therefore, we need to process all the variables as part of that, and being able to bring layer by layer by layer information until you have this picture that is literally showing you the maximum point and where to do it, and the seasonality with the wind and the altitude and all the other variables that we were collecting through all of these sensors. And then you have to think about where is the closest grid, so you can actually share this energy with somebody, and how that is going to be logistics involved, as in, okay, now what? You're producing this, where is it going, how far it is, how are we going to get it there? So it has to be a combination of factors and variables. And where you have all of these inputs coming from all over the place is where data science brings the sweetest spot, because you are collecting all of this data, processing all of this data, understanding what it's telling you, identifying these patterns, and then connecting the dots between what you are seeing versus with the developers and their questions and their own, so what do we do with that, right? And that's part of what we do, right, as data scientists, connecting those dots.
And then you moved on to a role in Texas Instruments, and then also worked. That was, you worked for 5 years at Texas Instruments as a product engineer and a data analyst.
Mhm.
Now, from that role now this is from 2007 to 2012, and I think somewhere between that, I think data science was called as the sexiest job.
Yep.
This thing, and then it started becoming a buzzword.
Mhm.
How did your role as a data analyst evolve during those 5 years? What were some of the things which were different from your role at Texas Instruments? How did the industry start perceiving your roles, and what was your experience overall?
Yeah, well, Texas Instruments was a beautiful experience. I call it my big data university, right? I felt that they actually throw me in the pool. Like my job description was yield engineer. And what that means is that you have to optimize production. And what that means in the semiconductor industry is that you are literally consuming millions of data points an hour across 10,000 different steps, because to produce a semiconductor wafer, you need to go through all kinds of chemical processes. And first of all, you have a silicon wafer that you are trying to cut into the different dies or actual circuit that has all the logic that then you're going to actually put in a package form. So physically, you're going to put it somewhere, and that as well has to be tested and tested and tested. So at the end, if you want to optimize yield or production, you need to understand the problem holistically. And understand the problem holistically with 10,000 steps in between is not an easy thing to do when everything is data, but at the same time, coming from a completely different location, because as you can imagine, I had the most diverse infrastructure to work with as like ever, right? So we were working with fabs in Philippines, we were working with fabs in Dallas, we were working with test floors in a completely different physical location. So you are talking to a bunch of people, and everybody has their own perspective, their own process, their own in and outs. But for me, it was how I'm going to combine all of this from all of these sources and really maximize what we can produce. But most importantly, how to avoid producing something that is not going to be successful, that is going to be a failure, that is going to fail the final test, and how we're going to save the amount of money that is going to take to code it and to put it into a package form and to actually produce it. How early can we detect that? And that's where data science becomes a thing for me, because it's like I'm not only analyzing what is happening here, I am becoming predictive. Exactly. So I started to grow up my own analytics journey, and I went from descriptive, which is, okay, show me the problem and show me where are we having the failures and so on, to the predictive, which is based on these initial tests that we are doing very early in the process. Can we predict which of these dies are going to be a failure, so we don't have to cut them and we don't have to package them, and therefore we're saving millions of dollars. And when I made the connection between what I was doing and the value that actually generated for TI, it was an aha moment in my career, right? When I discovered the power of data, when I saw it for the first time, like how impactful it can be when I land at a result that holistically is telling me what to assemble and what to not assemble, because it has a high probability to fail based on everything else that I have been learning about this data and the patterns and everything else together. So phenomenal experience, but it took me 5 years to really understand what is it that I was doing, right?
That's very interesting. And for our audience, it would be amazing for you. Can you give us few examples? So, and walk us through your journey from your previous role to this role. And you had to move from descriptive and inquisitive analysis to now predictive analytics. How did you have to obviously upskilling was a big thing. You had to keep learning on newer things, but apart from that as well, when it comes to managing different stakeholders, communicating them the different results, making them trust your probabilistic predictions, right? And ensuring that everybody is on board, so that there is good adoption of some of the models that you're building, predictions that you're making. What did your role, how did your role had to evolve? Because the previous ones, you had to just convince them that, see, this is the data.
Yeah.
Now you're going to say, this is the data, so this might happen, this might fail at some point.
Yeah.
Stakeholder management changes drastically, so it will be very interesting to learn through anecdotes.
Drastically. Well, so I have a couple of things to share with you. First of all, I'm Colombian, so my first language is Spanish.
Yes.
And Texas Instruments is a very diverse company, and we have people from all over the world. So it was not an easy journey at all, especially the first year. Like, I literally had to study the meetings 3 times, 5 times to really kind of connect dots. So that communication, as you mentioned, it's fundamental. It's like the number one thing that needs to happen is for you to understand that whatever you are doing, you can be the smartest person in the world, and you can be deep dive down into Python and programming and yada, 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 and algorithm 1 versus 2 versus 3. But if you are not able to communicate that to your stakeholders, you're done. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter your level of expertise and all those skills. You're done. Because the real value of what we do in terms of data is what it means for the stakeholders that actually have a value metric as part of it. So it's the what and the how, and how it actually impacts the business. So the journey started, first of all, the upskilling. You are spot on, right? I do have 3 master's degrees, and I'm an engineer by trade. I was a professor back in Colombia. I am very deep into engineer. I have very serious engineering skills, but none of that made a lot of sense when I was trying to put all of this together, because I was learning pretty much on the fly. Like, what is it that we have to do? So I started programming in R very early in my career, and that was kind of the beginning of that predictive aspect of it. So from descriptive to predictive. The descriptive aspect there was very BI oriented. So that was the era of the business intelligence. Everybody was talking about business intelligence. Everybody was talking about dashboarding and the power of dashboarding and producing all of those BI dashboards that you can actually describe what the problem is. So that is a stage 1. Stage 1 is that, okay, this person really understands the problem, right? So I am seeing it. I can paint it for you in this visualization. I can explain, that's very important. I can explain how I landed there. And I can make somebody in the room that has 0 data science, data analytics skills, understand what is it that I am seeing within that pattern, no? So that's a stage 1, you are spot on. And then you grow within that. Once you get that trust, it's like, okay, we can see the problem. We can see the problem here. And then everybody actually becomes kind of, everybody has an opinion, right? Have you tried that? Have you tried that? Have you seen that? Have you seen that? So I think that actually pushed me into my own skills, as in, that's a good idea. Let me try to add another layer here and another layer here. Well, every time that I needed to add another layer, I faced all kinds of obstacles and friction and problem. I didn't have the right permissions. I didn't have access to the right data. You have to know how to program in Perl. I don't know if you have heard of Perl, but that was a big issue at that time. You have to yada, 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 yada. So it took me weeks in between to actually being able to add that extra layer and start adding more and more to the pattern so it can actually emerge, right? So it was kind of a science, not only from the data analysis perspective, but also from the people perspective, the communication, the stakeholders, the communicating to group one that, oh, I need permissions to this data because group three is asking about this layer of information and I can even have access to it. So how do you communicate with one person and the other one, and what is it that you are trying to accomplish becomes a huge component of what you bring to the table when you are trying to analyze this data and do any kind of predictions. And then you kind of evolve, like the predictive part of it, as I mentioned, was R mostly at that time. But at the end, it was also correlating that with a number. So that is what actually captures the attention of the stakeholders. It's like when I say, okay, we have the potential to save $2 million. Everybody's paying attention, and then I go back, right? This is how we're going to do it. And this is why. And these are all the variables or all the inputs to do so. So spot on into the journey. Upskilling is part of it. But at the same time, the communication has to be a fundamental part of when you are trying to express what the data is telling you. And most importantly, what is the value or what is the potential of that value that it brings to the table. And that's where you get usually the attention from the different stakeholders, right?
It's so much fun to hear these stories, you know.
I know.
When you said I'm Colombian, it reminded me of Sofia Vergara in Modern Family, and she's like, do you know how smart I am in Spanish?"
Yes. And I had a lot of moments where my brain was stuck in Spanish and I was trying to communicate it in English, all of that. It's like it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
It depends on the language you think in or dream in.
Exactly. Sometimes I dream, depending on who I'm dreaming with. If it is my family and all of that, I dream in Spanish. But if it is work related or anything US related, I dream in English. And right now it's very natural, but it took a little learning, right? It's a process.
Yeah. After that, you moved on to consultancy roles, right? You moved to TIPCO, right? Now we will also talk about how the data industry evolved through that as well after 2012, and until 2016, 2017, the language moved from predictive to more advanced analytical methods and some of that. But at the same time, the role from being an internal stakeholder and conveying this thing to consultancy is also very different. So if you can help us understand the difference in terms of working in a company, solving data problems for the company versus consulting other company, that as well, and then how that the role of data analytics, data science, and AI also evolved over a period of time.
Yeah, and that's a big one. So internally, when you are working for a company, you are facing all kinds of obstacles and friction, but it's your role, right? Like, okay, I own this. This is my goal. So my days were 100% how I'm gonna fix this and how I'm gonna deliver into what is expected from me from this angle. But that gave me powers. That gave me very special powers, right? So 5 years of that, I learned how to communicate with third parties. I learned how to break the barriers of the tech pockets and actually consolidate information from the data aspect of it. I learned how to put together the 2+2 so you can actually get the support from the stakeholders that you need to get the support. I learned how to gain the trust from the people that you need support in your journey. And that was my career in big data and data science at TI that gave me all of those new skills. So I learned how powerful data was. And I learned the potential value of it and how to connect the 2+2. And that gave me what I needed to be successful in the consultant stage, right? So what it means is that I knew my ABCs and I was able to apply those ABCs externally with multiple companies now. And it was like, okay, this is what you are trying to accomplish. Well, let me tell you what you are going to be facing. Let me tell you how you can potentially fix it. Let me tell you what kind of technology could be involved. And that's how I ended up at TIPCO, right? So TIPCO at the time was leading the business intelligence side with the Spotfire. I was very good at Spotfire. It actually became like my right hand. I had a YouTube channel where I solved a lot of problems using the Spotfire for different industries, including energy and oil and gas. I am in Houston. So that was kind of an organic thing to happen. And the trust comes with the fact that I was able to paint the picture. So when somebody comes and says, oh, I have a problem, we are trying to do predictive maintenance, we have all of these sensors coming from all over the field, and this is our situation, yada, 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 I was able to simulate the solution. I was able to provide the sensors, the predictive maintenance solution, and show them this is how it can potentially help you. And this is the value that it can potentially add to the table. And these are the frictions that you are going to be facing. And these are the stakeholders that you need to have involved, and so on, right? So I applied everything that I was learning from my previous life into my new role, as in, I've been there, I've done that, I know how to help you. And it comes from my core because I've been there. So it was a very natural transition, but at the same time, was another layer of education for me as well, because now I was hearing about all the use cases being deployed in the field at different verticals. So it was not only semiconductors, it was not only TI, it was everybody else. It was energy, it was oil and gas, it was upstream, midstream, downstream, it was renewable energy, and everything in between, supply chain and everything in between. So data is data. And I definitely understand the power of it. So at the end, it doesn't matter, like everybody's trying to optimize something. Let's make this better. Let's reduce cost here. Let's optimize process, right? That's kind of what everybody's targeting. The how and where the data is coming and what is the technique that we're going to use and what is the infrastructure that is involved is a different story, but everybody has their own story about it. And that gave me extra power now, because not only I was able to solve the problem from the TI perspective and the use case perspective, but now I know what everybody else is going through. And I can share lessons learned. I learned that from this person. I can give you that. And we can accelerate your own process. So I became even a better consultant, right? Because now it's like I have a lot of knowledge that I can share, and I can save you some time, and we can accelerate your time to value.
Yeah. I think it is also very important, right? Something that many people over my career have said, you have to get your hands dirty. You have to kind of work on the shop floor before going into the meeting room and working. And I think the some of the roles that you held from your start kind of shaped you into your consulting role as well. Now moving on to today, like, from after post chat GPT world, right? And I want to now talk about Gen AI. We can't escape that. Right? But at the same time, before, I think you joined Dataiku, if I'm not wrong, in 2021, right? And chat GPT was released after that. Right? And it was your role. Probably at that time, Gen AI was not such a big talk of the town. So even in Dataiku, you have gone from working on products and being a solutions engineer to now a full field CDO. And your role must have evolved a lot, right, in terms of consulting. Walk us through that a little bit. What was the kind of language from your executive leadership that was starting to communicate to you in terms of being a field studio? What were the conversations pre-chat GPT, post-chat GPT that you should be having with your clients? Were you asked to talk more about Gen AI as such as a service and some of these things as well?
Oh yeah, everybody is talking about Gen AI now. I love the journey, not only my journey from the data science consulting aspect, but also the community journey, because I believe that we have been evolving together in the last 20 years or so. I like to think about, I'm an electronic engineer as well, so I come with a hardware background, not only the software aspect of it. So for me, it's been an evolution from the hardware aspect and the compute and the capacity and the infrastructures and the cloud and everything else that we have as part of that, where this is happening physically. And I would say that the journey has been evolving tremendously with the different techniques that AI as a big umbrella brings to the table, right? So if we think about AI, we can think about machine learning and computer vision and natural language processing and blah, blah, blah. At the end, they're all techniques that are being used, applied to different data, depending on the use case that you are trying to solve. So it can involve structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured, a mixed of, and yada, yada, yada. But with generative AI, and this is the beauty of it, it's been fascinating to see the general public facing a new era where AI is part of their everyday tasks. And we are all involved into something that is AI related, and we are not even thinking about, oh, that is AI related, right? Simple examples like a Netflix, you watch a movie and then it's recommending you what to watch next, or Amazon, you are buying something and it's giving you the recommendations, or media, Facebook or Instagram or whatever, when it's recognizing the faces of your friends and it's tagging that for you and things like that, that you are not even thinking about, oh, this is AI happening here. But from the enterprise perspective, Gen AI, I will describe it as a pivotal moment. I will say the era of AI before Gen AI and after Gen AI, especially when GPT was released to the public. Because if we think about LLMs, this has been going on for years. We have multiple LLMs out there that have been available to the public for years, Hugging Face, or some others that are even a mix between open source and not open source and so on. But GPT and the release of that by OpenAI has been a line in the sand, right? Because now everybody is empowered by that technology outside the enterprise. So what that is triggering for everybody else in the community is the conversation is moving from, I am not only talking with the data analysts, data engineers, and yada, 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 but now the curiosity is coming from the C-suite. So that is also my evolution to field CDO, which is, okay, let's talk to the C-suite and let's ensure that the C-suite understands what this is, because there is a lot of education that needs to happen. Not everybody is, pretty aware of the pros and the positives and negatives. And this is not a silver bullet. It's not like we're going to fix the world with this. We still have to think about this holistically. We have to keep that human in the loop. We need to ensure that you minimize hallucinations and everything else that you may have. But it is an accelerator. And I am seeing it in the field right now. The most beautiful use cases that involve Gen AI with these agents pretty much accelerating the insights into this data in a more real-time fashion, right? So it's changing the way that the enterprise is questioning this data and is accelerating the insights that a lot of these SMEs or subject matter experts or domain experts have in terms of that data that becomes crucial when they are making decisions, and therefore accelerating that time to value. So Gen AI is pivotal. It's changing tremendously the conversations that we are having, because now it's pretty much chatbot driven. A lot of people is targeting that kind of use cases in the field, where they can leverage not only their structured classic data, but now more than ever, the unstructured data that is part of these use cases. So it's a fundamental piece of the equation that we are dealing with right now as data scientists, understanding what these LLMs bring to the table and how it can be leveraged within enterprise, but in a way that is still governable, secure, and that you are pretty much checking all the boxes that you need to be checking from the responsible AI deployment perspective, from the risk and legal perspective, ethical perspective, everything else that we have been learning during the last 20 years. So what it means to have explainability, what it means to have an hallucination, and is it going to be a legal concern for us, and how we're going to deal with it. So it's been a phenomenal transition, but yes, Gen AI is a huge shift, and I will call it a pivotal moment for the industry right now.
Fantastic. And now going forward from Gen AI, we are moving to agentic AI. That is the new buzzword. How do you anticipate your role evolving?
Yeah, supporting the evolution of the use cases targeting the enterprise data using that technology. I actually had a keynote a couple of days ago on that, and that's exactly what is going on right now. So when we think about those AI agents, at the end, what we're going to have is multiple micro automation jobs, if we think about it from that perspective. And what is going to happen is that you're going to have a task-specific agent. I see it as a digital intern. Let's think about it as a digital intern. That you are training, that you are helping, that you are providing the guardrails, that you are providing and describing specifically what your mission is. No, so your mission is to help me with this, and that I'm gonna empower you, agent, to have access to that documentation, unstructured data, and whatever else that you need to provide the best possible answer within that specific role. Now, if you put many of these together, you have this agent, this agent, this agent, and then you have a flow that actually even allows them to communicate with each other. And to go from here to here to here, you start building into this new AI system architecture that is going to allow your SMEs to question this data in real time and having these phenomenal insights in a fashion way that is now very natural for them because it's natural language, and they're communicating with the data in the most organic way from the human perspective. So it's empowering users from all domains and from all business units. My favorite use cases come from example from the human resources groups or the marketing teams that usually were not the data engineers, data scientists using the structured data. Now they are empowered by these user interfaces that are actually querying LLMs, but with retrieval augmented generation techniques that are enriching the knowledge that is go through these LLMs with that domain specific unstructured data. And again, pivotal in the community, pivotal in the field right now in terms of what this can do and the value that it can bring to the table. So how my role is going to evolve? Well, the beauty of it is that I am leading the innovation change, right? And I am with technology in my hands that is actually leading these use cases being deployed at the field and scalable, and thinking not only, oh, I'm going to experiment with this one agent in my desktop. No, it's like how we're going to release this for the 50,000 people that are going to be questioning this data in real time, right? So I am leading that change, and that's how my role evolves every day, because next week I will have a new use case to share with the community, and it's a phenomenal opportunity.
Fantastic. And finally, what is your advice for some of the upcoming, data professionals, AI professionals? Because you had the chance of, working right from the scratch, doing data analysis at a very descriptive phase, then working on to predictive analytics, moving to consultancy roles, and then working on, state of probably the most state of the art technology that there is, Gen AI and agentic AI. Some of them would graduate, and would directly probably want to start working on agentic AI because that is the most hot stuff right now. But getting the fundamentals right and getting everything right is very critical. Plus, with so many tools and technologies today, building an AI model has become way simpler. What is your one piece of advice, or what is your overall advice for some of these professionals who want to make a career or have a career path similar to yours?
Yeah. Well, I will say that technology can be overwhelming, especially if you are not tech background per se persona. But I will also say that it has come a long way. And today, the skills that are required for you to have an AI agent are completely different from what it was out there 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So my advice number one is, don't be afraid to, and this is for real. There is so much out there from the resources aspect of it. It can be overwhelming, but at the same time, if you have the end goal in mind. So my end goal in mind is to have my own AI agent that is gonna talk to me about, I don't know, music, because I am passionate about music. Okay, so what needs to happen for you to have that? Number one recommendation, yes, I work on Dataiku, and maybe I'm a little biased, but Dataiku has a phenomenal academy portal that is available to the public, and that is not only focused on the technology, but it's also highlighting the what's and the hows and the whys of that use case or the solution. So it's going to allow you to connect the dots a little bit. It doesn't matter if you bring the experience, so it can be, you don't need to have any coding experiences or anything. And I think that's the beauty of what technology brings to the table today, is that it's easier to close the gap between developers or not developers, business users, and so on. You can be a regular, I used to use Excel in my time, and now I'm ready for Gen AI. Well, you can jump like that today because technology is there, as in connecting those dots and closing that gap. So something like Dataiku, for example, can accelerate that process, as in I don't need to have any of those Python or SQL skills, and I can still apply the technology to have my Gen AI agent that is going to answer these questions in a more natural way. Keep in mind that you have to remain as agnostic as possible to that infrastructure. So I will say there is always going to be a new piece of hardware that is going to be part of the equation. You will have better compute somewhere. You will be able to do things better as CPUs, GPUs, evolution, and all of that. So you have to be agnostic to that as much as possible, and keep orchestrating the pieces that are necessary for you to actually accomplish something like that, but remaining agnostic to that change in that infrastructure. And again, Dataiku could be a phenomenal starting point. And now, if you do have the open source and the programmer skills and so on, I mean, you can do Python today and be done, and just call an LLM from Hugging Face and be done. But when I am talking about you can do it today, I'm referring to everybody else that is not a coder, that is not a data scientist by trade. And I think today we do have the opportunity to sit down for a couple of hours, go to a couple of exercises in a portal like Dataiku Academy, and understand what LLM or AI agent is, and give me some examples and review what it can do for me. I love podcasts as well, everything that is tech related, or that interviews people that is in the field, that has some lessons learned, been there, done that, listen to each other, learn from each other. I also go to a lot of conferences. We were talking about that at the beginning of the call. I love seeing firsthand, because conferences usually bring the state of the art. I just did this, I just deployed this is the last thing that we did and it was successful. So try to stay as up to date as you can, but I'm going to say is really up to you. Like, do not sit down and wait for your company to bring the training to you. Like, today you can actually be super proactive and just Google a couple of things and, hey, give me an example of Gen AI, apply to the industry, and get inspired, right? And then complement that with a couple of things that are open source or available to the public, like an academy portal and so on, to start doing like a 2 hours exercise and see how far you can get with technology like Dataiku, where low code, no code, or code, it doesn't really matter. You can accomplish the same goal, and it takes you a long way. So today, this is a great opportunity to be able to question what is it that this brings for me, and how can I apply it. But I also will say, if you have no clue what Gen AI it is, it's time for you to know. So this is the time that we either use Midjourney to generate super cool graphs, or to use WhatsApp and use the now embedded Llama chat that you have there and ask something crazy and see what happens. Or, this is the time where you need to be prompting. You need to be experimenting and saying, oh, what is this thing? And what it gives me as a human, and how it's going to empower me and augment me as a human. And I think that's the key component of this. Is just don't be afraid, but also be the human and be the one who is actually in control of it and seeing what is it that it does and how you are going to be able to use it and leverage it. Yeah.
Fantastic. This was very, very wholesome, Catalina. I loved walking through your journey. I'm sure that it got back a lot of memories, and you could relive your journey as well. Thank you so much for making the time. I'm sure our audience will love this, love hearing your story, and get inspired to become have a successful career in the field of data and AI.
Well, I appreciate the time, and it was fun to go through all of those stages of the journey. So I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you so much.